Welcome back to another edition of Political Breakfast. You're listening here on WABE, and we certainly do appreciate it always. I'm Lisa Rayam, and with me today are our strategists, Brian Robinson and Tharon Johnson. Happy Monday to both of you.
Hey there. Good to be with you.
What kind of weekend did you have?
Yeesh. I didn't get out of bed or the recliner from Saturday morning till Monday morning. I was at the Capitol for like half a day on Wednesday, and of course, whatever bug there is hits you. I am lucky in that it was less than 48 hours of duration, but I napped through much of the NFL playoffs.
Ah, you did?
Yes.
Yeah, that bug is going around. It really is surging here in Georgia. So
yeah, you sounded pretty rough when we were on air last week. We were on live. I
it was
couldn't say
rough.
anything, but you sounded like you
rough. It was rough. But we got through it. Yeah. Darren, how are you?
Doing great. Good weekend. Got a chance to go watch the Oregon Ducks get their butts kicked by the Indiana Hoosiers.
They did.
Yeah,
that was surprising. That was surprising to me.
But spent some time in East Point and South Fulton.
Okay.
Went to the inauguration of Carmelita Gumbs, the new mayor.
Oh, okay.
South Fulton. Got a chance to make it over briefly to East Point. Did some stuff with them. Went by the Wild Hog Supper. Kickoff on Sunday night. Very, very packed. Feeding Georgia, great organization, doing some good stuff. And congratulations to Indiana and Miami. I'm going for Miami. They were my second or third team, favorite college team growing up. And I think the Falcons have fired, Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris and Matt Ryan fell forward and got a new job at president with no experience at Atlanta Falcons. So let's see how it works out.
Yeah, welcome to that news.
Locked and loaded this morning, man.
Yeah.
Here's my one thought on the firing of Raheem Morris. I don't want to talk too much about football today, but it really is bad for the men's capri pants market to lose another model from the NFL.
Oh, yeah, a lot of changes in the sports world. But hey, we're looking at changes under the Gold Dome. Today marks the first day, or the start of the legislative session, and everybody is talking about their list of priorities. So I want to jump in with you guys. What do you think should top the agenda this session? Tharon, you first.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the lieutenant governor has made it very clear, along with others, Appropriations Chair Senator Blake Tillery, Steve Gooch, who's running also for lieutenant governor along with Blake, that we're about to have a robust conversation about what does a phased approach to eliminating the state income tax looks like for all Georgians. And so this is a top priority that many folks have been waiting on some details to come out. I know Brian will get into this a little bit later, but the speaker came out with a proposal around property taxes, but Brian, he gets the first dibs on that because that's his guy. I know he's working with him on this, so I won't go too much into that. But I was happy to hear the speaker talk about wanting to do more around dealing with mental illness. We've said on this podcast a lot that responsible gun ownership is very important. So we're going to revisit this whole lockbox legislation. And the Democrats are really going to be focusing on making sure that we do something about healthcare, trying to make sure we can provide more funding for healthcare. Rural hospitals are closing. Maternal mortality is still a big issue that Democrats are going to be focusing on. We will unfortunately have to have a conversation again about whether or not we're going to be able to spend some money in the surplus. We're waiting on the governor as we take to kind of come out with his priorities, but I think we'll get a soon snapshot on that. And then lastly, making sure that our pre-K and education cuts that we saw from the federal government, a lot of things have been closed down, what the state can do to try to make sure that pre-K and public education get the funding that they deserve. So those are just a few things that I think that are going to come up. I'm hearing sports betting is probably not going to get too much traction this session. Of course, data centers will be discussed again, and whether or not the state continues to incentivize businesses to come to the state. But it's going to be a very fast session. The goal is to be out either on April 2nd or before as we tape. But ultimately, I think legislators want to get in and get out so they can raise money.
Oh, boy, the issue of sports betting. What does that do to you, Brian, when you hear that? It comes up every single session, doesn't it?
Well, it's
Seems
like
like. Seems
yeah.
like. Yeah.
Well, and there's going to continue to be a push on it. I think with each and every year, you see more and more people willing to step up and do it. One setback in the past year is that the most vocal spokesperson and the sponsor in the House, Marcus Wiederer, resigned from his seat back during the fall. This, of course, is an issue we've discussed because a Democrat ended up picking up that Republican seat in that special election. So the loss of Marcus was a big deal. But Speaker Burns was asked about this issue at the news conference he held last week, the one where I probably got the stomach bug that I ended up getting. And, he was like, I don't think they had the votes back then, but I do think over time that the votes will be there. And look, it's going to be an important source of revenue, particularly as we're continuing to look at ways to cut the tax burden on Georgia families. You're going to be looking for backfills, places to make up for that money. And this is one of the obvious ones. One point that I always make is it really doesn't matter if you think sports betting is good or not. For me personally, it's not something that I'm necessarily going to engage in, but I believe in the rights of others to do it. And those people who want to do it can do it now illegally. That's the issue. All legalizing, quote unquote, does is create a regulatory system so that we can tax it and provide consumer protections. So will it increase the number of people who are participating? Possibly. I don't argue that point, but it's a way to do it more safely, and it's a way for the state to benefit in a way that it doesn't right now.
Yeah. Property tax reform, that's another issue we've been hearing a lot about. Will it take life, do you think, Tharon, in 2026? And if so, how much so?
Well, this speaker is very defiant about laying out his priorities at the beginning of the session. His predecessor, Speaker Ralston, would do it as well. But Speaker Burns has a different style, Lisa. We have now seen since he's been Speaker, prior to the session, he is very laser-like focused on what he wants to focus on. And not only does he convey it to the public in a way, whether it's through a press conference, through a release, and sorry, Brian caught the bug down at the Capitol for being there.
I'm just guessing that's where it's from.
No, that Capitol definitely has a lot of germs.
Well, be careful there. And I was with you on Friday, so you just need to be on the lookout. I was sitting beside you for a good bit on Friday.
You were a little quiet and a little irritable, but I thought it was because of the stuff going on in Minneapolis. But now I know that you're not feeling it well, so we won't go there today. Yes, Lisa, it will get some traction because the speaker has spent the entire off session looking at this issue. Brian and I actually saw him down in Sea Island where we spoke to a group of people from out of town. And I think then, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, he was with his team looking at ways that he can talk to local municipalities. So it is going to get some traction, and he's going to push it. What I would say, Lisa, is keep a very, very sort of laser-like focus on what the GMAs and ACCGs of the world. If you start taking away property tax digest dollars from local governments, many of these municipalities and local entities require that money. How do you replace it? Now, you also have some property tax relief plans already in place. When Michael Thurman was the DeKalb CEO, he looked at ways of utilizing dollars and tax breaks for seniors, and particularly through homestead exemptions. So counties have already sort of done this, like DeKalb when Thurman was there, but now the speaker is saying, no, we want to go to the legislature and look at something that we can do for the entire state. So he's been pretty bullish about this. Some Democrats have been a little quiet on this. Some have been a little vocal. So we'll see what both caucuses are able to do to come together to see if there's an actual bill that will pass through the House, and then it'll be probably met over to the Senate with a lot of questions.
I see you shaking your head, nodding your head. Yes, Brian, you agree?
Yeah, that's a good start to the conversation there. And look, we can't have all of the proposals that we're hearing coming out of last week passed, because there's got to be tax paid somewhere, right? Let's acknowledge that. There's got to be some compromise. The House is focused on property tax, and what the Speaker has proposed, and we'll get more details from Ways and Means Chairman Shaw Blackman in the coming days, is an elimination of property taxes on your personal residence. So when it's homesteaded, no property tax. So there's obviously, as Tharon said, going to be a lot of questions from local government about what the backfills are. One thing that the Speaker's office said to me when this was rolled out was, Brian, when you're talking about this in the media, make sure that they know that there are backfills included. I'm not an expert on what those are. Maybe I can come back to you at a future date with some more details. But that was something that was very top of mind to them, that we, we understand that there's going to be pushback and we're going to have an answer for those questions. The income tax approach that we're seeing in the Senate would take off 2/3 of Georgians from the income tax rolls. And someone corrected me because I said last week those people wouldn't have to file tax returns. And somebody said, no, they still have to file tax returns because what this does is raise the standard deduction. So you have to file your taxes, and then, if you're a married couple, it's $98,000. You have zero tax liability. So I stand corrected on that. But basically, you would then phase out the rest of the income tax over the next 6 years between now and 2032. And what's important is that those who are still paying taxes would still get their first $50,000 for a single person, first $100,000 for a married couple, taxes removed from the tax roll. So everybody gets a tax cut, but working class, middle class Georgians are completely eliminated from the tax rolls. We can't do all of this at once. Somebody's going to have to give. And so we may take a little bit of the Senate plan and move that forward. Maybe take some part of property tax relief on the House side and move that forward. But one thing we're all waiting for here that we have not gotten yet, and maybe it's going to be at Eggs and Issues on Wednesday, maybe it's going to be at the State of the State address on Thursday, Brian Kemp's last one as governor. We haven't heard what Brian Kemp's position on this is. And he is going to be the ultimate arbiter. It will be his decision if both House and Senate are going after tax relief, but in a way that is not the same. They're not talking about the same issues. Brian Kemp's going to be the one that has to bring everybody together and be like, hey, here's what I'll sign. Here's what I won't sign. Here's what I think is responsible. Here's what I think is irresponsible. But we're going to have a lot to talk about, the three of us, next Monday when we all come back together, because last week we got Burns and we got the Senate rollouts. This week we'll get Kemp's agenda, such as it is. We'll have a lot to cover over the next couple of weeks as we see Kemp's final agenda coming out. We're seeing reporting today that he does plan to start chipping away at some of that surplus funds that we have in reserve at $15-16 billion. He has some ways he wants to spend that, and I think we're all very anxious to see what that is, because one thing Kemp has been very consistent on is he wants one-time expenses. He has not wanted to use the surplus to create new ongoing programs that will spend far into the future.
Right.
Yes. So he wants, I would imagine there's going to be some infrastructure that he's going to be wanting to do. That's a good one-time example. But he may surprise us and come out with something that is a recurring cost.
Tharon, how aggressive do you think the governor's going to be?
I think this governor has been really disciplined. I mean, Brian and I actually talked about this last week. You haven't really heard a whole lot from him this time of year than what you heard last year. And let's take our listeners back to 2 years prior. We were all waiting to see whether or not the governor is going to tackle tort reform. He kind of flirted with it early on in his statements at the Eggs and Issues. And then we saw 2 years ago that tort reform did not even, make it on the agenda. Last year, he was very, very specific about tort reform being passed and all the other stuff that he was doing. So this year, we have to wait. And what that tells me, Lisa, is that this governor understands that this is a combination of legacy, but also making sure that his unfinished agenda is accomplished. And so he wants to do things that's going to cement his legacy as a Georgia governor, but he's also going to figure out, okay, what am I going to be able to do and what haven't I done? The one thing that I hope that the governor will visit, and I know that he is probably getting this from other people as well, is that you hear me talk about Medicaid expansion. You hear me talk about rural hospitals closing, responsible gun ownership, mental illness, public school education, doing more for our seniors. But the one thing that I think that the governor can do that is going to make a tremendous impact, and it's a necessary but bold move, is that he's got to figure out how does he eliminate or decrease the $80+ million in debt that we saw that was reported around our foster care kids and defects. We've got to do something about that. Whether it's more funds that are needed, whether it's other cuts. He's got the surplus, but I would be very shocked if the governor does not do something about the I think it's roughly what, $87 million shortfall, budget shortfall that we saw that was reported. But I want to just say something about Commissioner Brose, who's going through a lot right now. She's gotten beat up pretty bad in the public. She's had some personal matters that go on, but I know her personally, Brian. I know you know her as well. But I think that her heart's in the right place. She's trying. But I hope that she hears this, and I know the governor and the first lady are hearing not only from us, but from legislators too. But it's also a woman who had to step up and was asked, correct me if I'm wrong, to do 2 jobs. I mean, she's doing 2 jobs now in this capacity. Was in the governor's office when I first met her. Now she's out. So I just want to let people know that I know this commissioner's heart, and I definitely think that she's trying. Just got to figure out the complex sort of system in place to get that done. Because the most vulnerable children in our state are those that are transitioning from home to home or trying to find a loving home. And for those that have, for no fault of their own, most of them have been put into foster care and into the Department of Family and Children's Services. I think that that's got to be a priority for the governor coming into this legislative session.
Hey, can I just second that? Can I just say absolutely?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a crisis to the point that I think Governor Kemp really has a moral obligation to speak to it this week in one of those major forums. I don't know that it's necessarily eggs and issues, but I do think this is a topic very appropriate and maybe imperative for the State of the State address to go over, because a lot of legislators are talking about it. They're concerned about it. They want to see leadership from the governor on it. The governor is the boss of these agencies. This is under his jurisdiction. So I think that it's important that he have a vision, not only for fixing the shortfall, but for correcting whatever the long-term problems are. Because obviously we have a long-term problem. I found out recently that Tharon's mom, Sugar, was a foster parent, and I did not know that. And shout out to her and to all of the other foster parents out there, because you are doing the Lord's work. I mean, these are children who have been given a real short shrift in life, and the success rates of foster kids coming out of high school are abysmal. It is one of the great moral failings of our society. And we've got to figure out a way. And I think the people at the DHS, including Commissioner Brooks, these are people with big hearts. These are people who care about these kids. And I'm not saying that any of these solutions are simple. This is a human tragedy far beyond the capacity of state government in many ways. But we've got to make sure that we do all we can for these children.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen. One other issue that's bound to come up or expected to come up is the issue over cell phone bans for K through 8 students. It took effect July 1st, I believe, but they're trying to extend it, I believe, to high schools.
Yes.
In fact. So I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? Gonna have some mad students out there.
But some happy parents. Go ahead, Terry.
I'm 50-50 on this one. So I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. My 2-year-old is obsessed with my wife's cell phone. It distracts him. He doesn't want to give it back most times.
Right.
And whereas my 5-year-old Tyson is not as distracted, but I do think it's a distraction. Now, the question then becomes, this is the fundamental question. At the age of 13, 14, 15, which most, entering the 9th grade, a lot of people are being skipped up now. So we got high school students right now that are even the age of like 12. Are they disciplined enough to not let the phone be a distraction in high school? I would say most of those students are disciplined. However, you do, like anything in life, particularly when you're dealing with teenagers, and I did a lot of crazy things when I was in high school, you're always going to have people who abuse this right to carry the cell phones. And so I think that while the kids would be upset, I defer to the teachers. If the teachers are saying that it's a huge distraction in the classrooms, with people pulling out, kids pulling out their cell phones in high schools, then I'm open to hearing that conversation. Show me the data. But I believe that most high school students usually lock their phones up in their locker, and they don't really have them on the classroom. You do have some that actually do have them in the classrooms. And so this is going to be interesting because a lot of parents, I think, want their kids to focus. They want them to learn. They don't want their cell phone to be a distraction. But I also sympathize. I have a bunch of friends who they got to be able to get in contact with their kids while they're at high school. High school students move a little differently, move a little faster than middle school kids. And so you got
a lot differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot
so you
differently.
have the ability to connect with them.
Yeah.
This is the elementary and middle school ban that we passed last year. I have heard has approval in the state of like 70-30, maybe approaching 80-20. I don't think there's going to be that margin for the high school ban, but
Right.
I think it's going to be still a large majority support. And we are seeing this backlash now to phone use because what we didn't have 10 years ago, we now have. We have the data on the impacts that these phones are having on our kids and really on all of us. Very recently, Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president as a Republican, now as a governor candidate in Ohio, said he was taking Twitter and Instagram and social media off of his phone because it was the distraction and because it didn't represent the real views of people. It was not an accurate reflection of Americans' views. And we've seen Democrat Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, former Obama chief of staff in the White House, former member of Congress, say he wants to see a national ban on social media for kids up to the age of 16 because the data shows how devastating the impact is on kids. And there's the mental health aspect, but also the distraction aspect. I know that I am addicted to my phone. I would imagine that the vast majority of people hearing my voice right now are addicted to their phones. The two people who aren't are my parents, who text, whenever they feel like it. They don't feel the need to be on call for me.
What a beautiful life that must be.
It must be great. Yeah, I know. I can't wait for the day if I can ever get over this addiction. But when you're sitting there looking through TikTok videos or Insta Reels, you can't focus on anything else. I mean, all you want is your brain just wants the dopamine hit of the next one. And I don't see kids learning what they need to learn with that level of distraction. Tharon mentioned his kids. Mine's 9, and she too gets super angry if you take away her iPad or her phone. I mean, there's a little tiger that comes out that is not there in my sweet little girl when there's no technology involved. But she can be ferocious. And when you talk to her, she doesn't listen. She doesn't respond to you when she's on that phone. There's no way she would be learning anything in school if she had access to a device in school. So I have no doubt that it's a huge distraction in high schools. I have no doubt that teachers have got to be banging their heads up against the wall. I'm sure teachers overwhelmingly support the ban. So I think it's at least worthwhile to pass. I think parents will support it. And look, we can come back in a year if there's been some major unforeseen circumstance, some unintended consequence, and reform it a little bit. But we've got a problem in our society with attention spans, and that is detrimental to education. And I will finish with this. One thing we didn't get to with Speaker Burns's agenda is literacy. And attention and focus is required.
Hand in hand. They go hand in hand,
if we're going to make a
right?
difference on literacy levels on this state.
Well, Brian, I left that one for you because, when the speaker sees us, he always teases me. He said, I promote and defend him more than you do. But
yes, it's a recurring joke for sure.
Yeah. But you definitely, the literacy is so important. But this cell phone thing, I'm telling y'all, let's wait and see. I mean, again, I'm 50-50 on it because I don't have kids in high school, but I do sympathize with them. I do have a lot of friends who do communicate with their children who are of high school age a lot during the breaks on their cell phone. So I do want to see how
a way to keep tabs on them, right?
But there's not one person on this show. There's 3 of us. Not one of us was able to talk to our parents during the school day.
No.
And and somehow we all made it.
Made it through, didn't we?
Yes.
We made it through.
Maybe this is going to be a break from helicopter parenting as well.
Well, this is week one of the legislature back to work, so we'll have plenty to talk about next week and the weeks to come. I wanted to touch on the lieutenant governor race. Former Macon-Bibb County Commissioner Seth Clark announced that he's running for lieutenant governor of Georgia, the third Democrat to join this race. Wanted to get some thoughts and perspective, of course, from the Republican side and the Democratic side. Tharon, you first.
Listen, I've known Seth for decades. He's a well-known former operative in the party. Cut his teeth doing campaigns. I remember he's done a few statewide races. Came onto the scene and ran for commissioner in Macon-Bibb County, and has really shown some tremendous leadership there. He is raising money. He's called. He has definitely thought this through. I specifically said to him, why would you want to get out here in this deep, cold water right now? But he believes, like many Democrats, that there is a pathway for him to win. He's got to, of course, compete in the primary. But he's a, white male, not from Atlanta, in the middle of Georgia, has a pretty progressive / somewhat moderate voting record. But I'm sure, if he's the nominee, he'll be painted as some crazy radical left-wing liberal. But he's got to show that he can raise money, and he's got to show that he can build a right coalition. So I think Seth has definitely earned this opportunity to run. He's well organized, well respected in the Democratic community, and we'll see how the fundraising goes. While he'll take advantage of that, while Josh McLaurin is one of the people who was a state senator who did not resign, who will be unable to raise money for his campaign while he's in the session.
All right, that's Richard Wright is the other candidate.
That's
so you know, Richard Wright. So go ahead and give us your thoughts, Brian, on Seth Clark.
I think we could talk about Richard Wright in a minute. That's going to need to be, in a couple of weeks, because neither Tharon nor I know who that is. he's got to raise his name ID some. He has not become aware to us. I don't know why anybody would run for lieutenant governor if you're a Democrat, because the Republicans are going to maintain control of the state Senate, and they will just change the rules and strip the lieutenant governor of any power. There's no constitutional power for the lieutenant governor. When McLaurin got in last year, I wrote a column in Georgia Trend about the futility of a Democrat becoming lieutenant governor, because basically you get an office, you get a staff, you get to stand up in the rostrum and bang a gavel, but that's about it. You don't even get to determine when you go to lunch in the Senate. So it's not a great gig, other than being the person in waiting to run for governor, a few years down the line. I do think that Josh McLaurin must be taking this challenge fairly seriously. I woke up this morning to a news release from his campaign saying that he is the fighter in this race, implying heavily that Mr. Clark is not the fighter that Democrat voters are going to need in this era where they're so driven by rage toward President Trump, that he's the rage against Trump candidate in a way that this other guy isn't. So he put out some quotes from some legislative leaders about how he's the real fighter. So you're seeing that battle line already being drawn there. But Tharon's right. This is the Seth's profile being from outside of Metro Atlanta, where so much of the Democratic base and Democrat leadership comes from, is something that would be beneficial for Democrats in a general election. It's good for them to have representation outside of the 28 county metro area. But McLaurin's got the advantage of being from Metro Atlanta in a primary where the vast bulk of Democratic primary vote comes from.
Lastly, let's end on the buzzword affordability. We're going to hear a lot, some predict, about affordability during this session.
Lisa, you've been doing this long enough to know that there was a time where you didn't hear the word affordable or affordability even come out of Republicans' mouth. Then, once it started becoming a crisis, what did they do? They changed it to workforce housing. So Democrats have been talking about affordable housing, affordability for decades. Now, many Republicans like Brian are reading the tea leaves, because it was just really a couple months ago that President Trump said that affordability and cost of living in this country, particularly affordability, is a hoax. So it took the Republicans finally to lose some races when they say, you know what, we may want to start talking about affordability a little bit more. And they went away from it because even though they didn't use just that word all the time, Brian was laser-like focused in his messaging last year about how President Biden was out of touch, that people cannot afford all the things that they were, could not afford. So now Republicans are using this word affordability now because they saw that the people in Georgia and the American people feel like under this Trump regime that it's not affordable to basically live in this country anymore. Now, there is a little bit of a difference there when you think about which direction the state is heading. But even that, I think I've seen some polling that while people would give the state a better grade than they would give the country as far as like being more affordable. But when you look at restaurants closing, people not being able to afford their prescription drugs, folks are working 2 and 3 jobs. Corporations are still laying off people. The cost of food and everything is just like enormously high right now. I think that it's not going to just be enough to just say the word anymore. It's going to be, what are you going to do about it?
Right.
Yeah. It is clearly in the data voters' number one concern. It was during the last 2 years of the Biden administration. It has been during the first year of the Trump administration. And one thing, to Tharon's point about what I said during the Biden administration, was Biden couldn't go out there and just say all of these macroeconomic indicators are doing great. Low unemployment, economic growth at 3%, et cetera. All the stuff that points to a good economy, because he wasn't speaking to what people were feeling in their own personal budgets. And what I think it is that the economy is working great for some people, just not for a lot of people. And there's a huge divide. So these macro numbers are still fairly favorable, and a lot of people are doing extraordinarily well. If you're heavily invested in the stock market, if you own your own home, you have done just fine over the last couple of years during the Biden and Trump administrations. It's for that other category of folks where it is really beginning to pinch their ability to make ends meet for their families. And people in office have got to speak to that. They've got to say, we hear you, we understand. Look, Republicans, where they want to be on this is, look, we are for removing restraints on our economy to let it explode, to let it expand, to create wealth, to create new jobs, and to grow our way out of this. That really is, to me, the best way to do it. But that's theoretical. We've got to be able to point to specific things. And that gets you to issues like what you're seeing from Trump right now, talking about taking on private equity, buying up homes, speaking to trying to limit what credit cards can charge interest rates, a policy that I don't think is very wise and one I think that would need to be approved by Congress if it was going to ever take effect. But I think what you can see from Republicans on the state level is a focus on taxes. And that's why you're hearing the speaker talk about lowering property taxes, which is the number one thing you hear from voters when you hear about taxes and affordability in the same conversation. It is in the property tax where they feel like the rise every year has been unsustainable, whereas the income tax has been sort of predictable. It's done nothing but go down basically over the last decade. So we haven't been having those same upward pressures on those prices. So the property tax angle is the one that probably speaks to affordability most. But the income tax angle, as the sponsor of the Senate version, Blake Tillery, says, gives every Georgian a 5% raise. If you pay taxes, you get a 5% raise to spend that money the way that you want to. So he, too, is putting it into an affordability model that to process this, to digest this. So I don't know what the Democrats are going to be for. Maybe Medicaid expansion is a way to put more people on healthcare rolls at a time when some people probably can't afford to stay on the exchange. But I think both sides have a incentive to talk about affordability. You're definitely going to see Republicans saying that word a lot over the next 3 months.
All right. And then, Tharon, you indicated Medicare will probably get a lot of airtime this session as well.
Yeah, I just think that if you literally listen to, we had a Democratic forum down in Savannah, and affordability, of course, was top of mind, cost of living, jobs, in the Savannah region, you've seen the Hyundai jobs now. And I can't believe when I read this, Lisa, that they're actually going to look at bringing in robots that can lift 110 pounds. I want to say that again for our listeners. There are going to be some robots in Southeast Georgia, along the coastal parts of Georgia, that's going to replace possibly these hard working American jobs that people in that region should have. But one of the things that you heard every single candidate talk about is that you got to look at a way to expand Medicaid. It is probably the only viable long-term, could be costly, solution to making sure that we keep people insured. As we are taping this podcast, we are now almost up to 500,000 people. I think it's roughly hovering around maybe high 300s, maybe 400,000. But by this time next month, we would have had over 500,000 people, if not over, right at 500,000 people who don't have health insurance because their subsidies are gone up, because they don't re-enroll in the Affordable Care Act. And so I just think that you can't keep having people go out here just winging it. And hospitals are closing. We don't have OBYGNs. Some people don't even have oncologists, nephrologists in their regions. And so the Republicans are going to have to figure out a way to do a horse trading deal with the Democrats. The Democrats have got to get something. If they're going to vote for property tax cuts and state income tax cuts, they better make sure that they get something that they can go back to their district and just say, hey, we were able to get this done for you. And I think Medicaid expansion or doing something more about our healthcare system has got to be at the top of the list for negotiation.
I said Medicare, but you're right, Medicaid expansion. All right, this is the only the beginning, so we certainly have a lot of fodder in the weeks to come. So want to thank you so much for checking in for this edition of Political Breakfast. Of course, more to come as this legislative session ramps up.
See you guys.
Thank you, and thank you, Trae Young, for your service to Atlanta, 4-time All-Star. Mixed emotions about whether or not he should have remained a Hawks, but definitely wishing well with the Wizards.